Hey guys, welcome back to Hope City's online experience. We are so glad you're here with us today.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Ashley.
And we are starting a brand new church here in Northwest Arkansas. And what we're all about is this. We think that hope is for everyone. And we want people to come to experience Jesus and the hope that he offers. And we believe that he's going to change our lives. And then he's going to go on to impact generations with that hope. And we do 3 things a month right now as we're getting ready to launch this church later on in 2021. We gather once a month. We party together. And we serve together. And we would love to invite you in to being part of this physically beyond just online. So here's some things that are coming up that if you want to take a next step with us, you want to get involved, here's some ways you could do that. Yeah, do you want to talk about that, Ash?
Yes. Yeah. So our next gathering, we will have that on June the 20th at the After School Program. That's the name of the building, and that's in Springdale. And we meet at 10 a.m. to noon. And if that's something you want to be a part of, you're more than welcome to join us that day. And then we're super excited about our next party in the community on June 24th. We are getting together for an Arkansas Naturals baseball game.
I love minor league baseball. It's like one of my favorite things.
I like the food at baseball games.
There you go.
And so we're super excited. This is a free event to the first 100 people. So be sure to look at the link in the comments below to register. And we're just super excited about that.
Yeah, free baseball game, but you have to register. So be sure to click that link.
Bring your family.
Yep. Hey, just to get to know each other a little bit before we just jump into a conversation, we've got a little summer edition of a game called Would You Rather. If you have kids, you probably play this because they go like, Would you rather, and then the grossest thing you can come up with. But we've got a fun summer version of this.
Yeah.
So the first Would You Rather question for the summer, Ash, and you can comment along with us if you're watching at home or in your car. Don't comment if you're driving or whatever. But would you rather spend a day on the lake or on the beach at the ocean?
I'm lake all day, only because I don't like sharks.
No sharks.
I really don't like the lake either, but that's what I pick.
The ocean sounds like vacation to me, and I want a vacation, so I'm going ocean right now.
You know, it's just water. Okay, so the next one is, would you rather have homemade ice cream, or would you like to be around a campfire making some s'mores with your friends?
S'mores for sure.
I agree.
How about you?
Campfire and s'mores.
Yep. And we can't
get
we can't get out of Would You Rather without at least one gross, creepy one.
Yeah.
So we just moved to a new house, and we've been finding all these things around our house. Would you rather find a snake in the backyard, Ash, or a spider in the house?
Snake.
Yeah,
for sure.
snake.
I hate spiders, even if they're like tiny.
Some spiders,
not
I
a
hate
fan.
snakes.
No.
Yeah. All right, last one here. It's summer break. You guys are probably going on vacation somewhere, and if you have kids, would you rather be on a 10-hour car ride with your kids asking, are we there yet, nonstop, or be home and stuck in the house on a rainy day, it's summer break, and you can't get outside?
I think the car ride, because that means we're like going somewhere special.
Yeah.
And we'll be there eventually.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for playing along with us. We've got some fun stuff planned that's still going to come. We've got some time that we're teaching. We're going to have a conversation, an experience, really.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
There's also going to be some music, and we're just really excited about Adam's talk today. And so we hope you'll come and join us at the table.
Now, some things are just meant to be experienced, right? Like, you think about a vacation, you can't just look at a vacation online. You actually have to get on the plane, go on vacation. Or how about this? How about sports? Like, if this past year has taught us anything, sporting events are meant to be experienced, not just like on TV, but live and in person with fans in the stadium. Or, like a concert. I've watched a lot of YouTube concert videos over this last year, and it's just not the same as being there, getting the feel of the crowd and the music in person. Or how about this, a great meal? It's better experienced like with a whole bunch of friends around a table, right? Or how about this, have you guys ever had a friend ask you, man, let me tell you this story about this great experience I had, and they go on to talk about it, and then you're trying to follow them, but then they go, hey, you would have just had to have been there, right? And you're like, thanks for that, real helpful, like I wasn't there. See, some things in life, they're not just stories to be shared. They're not just like something to be watched, but they're meant to be talked about. They're meant to be experienced together. And so for this month's online experience, we've invited some of our friends around the table together to do just that, to have an experience together. And for everyone watching online, we want to invite you into this as well. This is going to be an interactive conversation tonight, and it's going to be a time for you to hear from our real friends, people who are part of Hope City, who are experiencing Jesus through what he's doing here in Northwest Arkansas. And it's a time for you all online to jump into the conversation with us. So I've got a question I want to throw out to get us started. For my friends around the table and for everyone watching online, you can comment below on this one, but what is a great experience that you've been part of? What's something that you would follow it with, you just would have had to have been there? What's a great experience?
Okay, so one of my favorite experiences that I was a part of was a Razorback game. It was either fall of 2014 to 2015. It was versus LSU, longtime rival. We had a 17-game SEC losing streak. At this game, in a very cold November game, bundled up, we broke the 17-game losing streak, and nearly 50,000 fans rushed the field. And just the energy of it, there were bars ripped out of the concrete from the energy of this. People just wanted to get to that field, and truly you had to be there. No other way to describe it moment.
Wow. That was a scary night in the student section.
Very terrible.
I had always wanted to go to Passion ever since I was a really little kid. I'd just seen my dad use videos or pictures and stuff of Lou Giglio speaking or worship songs that would happen at Passion in Georgia. And when I turned 18, I finally was able to go, and there was nothing quite like experiencing a room of 75,000 people all worshiping at once. And it's you can't explain the way that you feel. You literally, you just said, have to be there. We got lucky enough to sit on the floor too, and so just everyone was there, and it didn't matter. We all knew why we were there, and it was amazing. It's just one of the greatest things.
For me, I think some of my best experiences come from sitting around a table like this. I think Thanksgiving dinner with family. We've got a huge family, so it's tons of people packed in a house around a table, all yelling, trying to be heard at the same time. It's great. Or having people over for dinner. You all know that's one of our favorite things to be able to do. But some things in life, like we were talking about, they're not meant to just be talked about, right? You had to be there. You actually have to experience it. And what I think is true about the experiences we're talking about, and what's also true about faith and following Jesus, is that it's something that's meant to be experienced. It's the same principle. See, Jesus, he's not just a concept to be talked about, or a story to be read, or a sermon to be preached. Jesus is way better than that. It's not enough just to know about Jesus, is it? Or just read about him or hear about him. It's not enough just to go to church. That doesn't cut it for us, does it? I think that's the reason that a lot of us, maybe we stop going to church for a while, or we don't go to church at all anymore, is because we've experienced church, right? We've experienced just going through the motions, but we've never experienced Jesus. And for some of us growing up, we gave up on church because it was boring, right? Or it just wasn't relevant to our lives, or people made it more about the rules or the ritual. And we didn't feel like we fit in. Or following Jesus, it was about religion, right? It was about doing the right thing. And see, that wasn't what Jesus had in mind. What he intended for following him in Christianity was a relationship and a life lived together. And in fact, that's why Jesus chose to enter into our world to begin with. He wasn't after more religion. He wasn't after more rules or written law. What he was after with us was a relationship with us. So one of Jesus' closest friends while he's here on this earth was a guy named John. And John said it this way in John 1:18. He said that there was a problem, that no one has ever seen God but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father. Jesus, that's who he's talking about, has made him known. And so up to this point, people had only known about God through conversations about him, or what they'd read in the Old Testament, which was the stories of everything that led up to Jesus. It was human history and Jewish history and laws and regulation. And it told the story of everything that happened before Jesus came on the scene. And so what people knew was regulations. They knew rules. They knew religion. But God never intended for this life to be just about rules and religion. See, what God is after is a relationship, a friendship with us. And if we've never seen God, for God to have a relationship with us, that's a problem. And so a relationship is something that's meant to be experienced, right? And if we go back just a few verses earlier, we find that John writes about that God had a solution to this problem. The solution goes like this in John 1:14. It says that the Word, talking about Jesus, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. He put on skin and came and lived with us. And so we saw the glory, we saw God's glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. See, what God knew and why Jesus ultimately came was that words and religion and rules, like, they're just not enough, are they? And so John, who was an eyewitness to Jesus, who spent time with him, who hung out with him, he talked about his friend Jesus this way. He goes, man, when we got to experience my friend Jesus, let me tell you, like, when he came and lived with us, we got to see the glory of God as a result. It wasn't just something that we heard about. It wasn't something that we talked about. It was something we experienced. And see, God's solution to the problem of people not knowing him was an experience. He put on flesh and he came to live with us. Why would God do that? Because he knows that some things in life just have to be experienced, don't they? And so I've got a question for all of our friends around the table tonight, and for you all watching online. I would love to have you all engage in the comments, but what's your experience with Jesus been like up to this point? What does that look like?
So when I was younger, I felt like Jesus was someone that was looking at me kind of judging everything I did. And if I did something bad, it's like, oh, Jesus is going to write that down. Like, he's going to remember and he'll hold that against me. And I think as I've gotten older and I've just realized it's more of a relationship with him and a friendship, like, he doesn't hold on to those things. Like, he doesn't hold on to the things of my past that I might be holding on to. And he wants me, even with all of that baggage and all of, like, the, you know, bad things, to still come to him. And he loves me anyway. And so, yeah, it's been really good as I've gotten older.
That's good.
For me, growing up in the church, it was a really interesting experience. Just trying to imagine who Jesus was, because there was never a moment where I wasn't thinking about him. It was just a constant for me since my dad was a pastor. So it was really hard for me to conceptualize, like, what a life without Jesus would look like. And so he became really normal, which is kind of scary. I kind of lost a little bit of awe for, like, who he is and what he did, which later on, like, when in my teenage years, kind of damaged my ability to feel grace or to understand grace, because he was just an imaginary friend, if you will, rather than someone that was real, because he had always was there, and I just kind of got numb. And so it wasn't until I hit very rock bottom that it was like, what is happening? Like, everything, my world fell apart, and it was time to, like, feel again, almost. And the way that he reached down into whatever pit I dug myself into was the most gracious feeling I'd ever felt, to be brought back up, to be built back up, and to understand him. And it's interesting because the background that I had in the church just made that experience so much better, because, like, it was all these things that I'd known for years, like knowledge-wise, became real, and it was just like a light bulb moment where I was like, okay, yeah, I understand what all these passages mean now. And, like, I was amped, I was fired, and and it's hopefully still am. Still, there's moments where, you know, it's kind of you still feel some of that numbness, but like, we're all a work in progress.
Yeah, that's good. And here's what happened when Jesus came on the scene. Aaron, I loved how you said he was like an imaginary friend, but he just started living life with people. Like, he was around tables with people, and he was at weddings and funerals, and he went to parties, and he went to what was the equivalent of church in those days. He hung out with religious people, and he hung out with people that were known as, like, notorious sinful people. But there was, like, literally no one that was off limits to Jesus. Like, everyone could come up close and get to know him. And Jesus' first invitation, it went like this. He just invited people to come and see. Just come sit around a table with me. Just come, like, experience me and see if I am who I claim to be. Now, see if a relationship with me is like what you've been looking for. Now, I love the way that the Message paraphrase puts John 1:14, what we read just a few minutes ago. It says this, it says that Jesus, he became flesh and blood, and he moved into the neighborhood. Like, literally moved in next door, right? And so I've got another question for us online and my friends around the table as well. If Jesus moved into your neighborhood today, If he moved in next door to you today, what would you experience? If he became your literal next door neighbor, what kind of neighbor do you think Jesus would be? Or who do you think might be in and out of your neighborhood, hanging out with Jesus at his house? What kinds of people would Jesus be inviting over?
So I think if Jesus was my neighbor, he would be that neighbor whose door is always open. You know that if you needed anything, that you could go to that neighbor. But at the same time, I think he would be real, you know, and authentic, and somebody that we could relate to on all levels. And just whenever you were celebrating, whenever you were having hard times, that he would be there.
Yeah, love it.
Come over with his casserole.
Exactly. And I think that's one thing that's, you know, as Ashley was saying earlier, that early in my Christianity, or early in my faith, I definitely felt that checklist.
Yeah.
You did this
Yeah.
bad. You did this, you failed. And I think as I've grown, and I still struggle with it today,
Same.
but I don't think that Jesus would be the neighbor pointing out that you need to mow your lawn and you need to take your trash out and you need to do some work on your landscaping. I don't think he would be that neighbor. I think he would be that neighbor there, lifting you up and celebrating with you, and helping you find your joy, and helping you live your life in that community that he has created.
Love
to embrace people and help people grow, and just help people live joyfully, you know, live with hope.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like Jesus would be inviting the misfits, the people who may not fit into the community, to be over at his house all the time.
And they're showing up next door to us, right? Like if Jesus moved in next door, yeah. See, Jesus is meant to be experienced. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a story, a time that Jesus came and sat around the table with people. And just like this table, like he moved into the neighborhood. He came to be with people. And so what we're going to see is who shows up around Jesus' table, who shows up in his neighborhood. And so we're going to take a look at Matthew chapter 9. And in Matthew chapter 9, it says this, that as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man named Matthew sitting in his tax collector booth. And we'll talk about what it means to be a tax collector here in a minute. But he said to Matthew, hey, follow me and be my disciple. And so Matthew got up and he started following Jesus. And in that culture and context, like a tax collector wasn't just like an IRS agent. They were actually more hated than the IRS is today because they sold out to the Romans who were occupying Israel at the time. And they would make money. They'd collect taxes for Caesar, but then for them to make money, they would steal a little extra for themselves. And so they lived a pretty wealthy, affluent lifestyle. And so Matthew, he's a traitor to the Jews. He's a thief. He's a sellout. So why in the world would Jesus ever ask somebody like Matthew to follow him? Well, I think it's this, because Jesus wasn't concerned about the religion or the rules so much. What he wanted with Matthew was a relationship. He wanted an experience with Matthew that ultimately would change Matthew's life forever. And so in verse 10, we'll see what happens next, that later Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples into his home as dinner guests, along with many other tax collectors, and I love how it puts us, disreputable sinners. And the Pharisees, the religious crowd, when they saw this, they asked Jesus' disciples, hey, why does your teacher eat with such scum? And see, the Pharisees, they were the church people, sometimes like me. They wore the right clothes, and they say all the right things, and they follow all the rules, and when they couldn't follow the rules, they made up rules for the rules that they couldn't follow, and they see Jesus eating with people that make them uncomfortable. And the issue was the sins of the tax collectors and these other notorious sinners, it was obvious, right? Like everybody could see it, and we could point it out. And we're quick to point fingers sometimes in the church, aren't we? And so the Pharisees would say things like, Jesus, why would you eat with them? I mean, don't you know that those tax collectors that you're eating with, Matthew stole money from my family. Don't you know that prostitute that's sitting across the table from you, don't you know how many marriages she's ruined and how many people she's slept with? Like, Jesus, isn't it obvious that they're sinners? And a good religious person like you would know that, and you wouldn't be eating dinner with them. Now, I know that some of us, we've felt this way in church before, right? Like you didn't feel like you fit in, and you knew you had issues, and instead of being welcomed, you felt judged, and no one maybe said anything directly, but you knew from the sideways glances or the fact that no one said a word to you when you walked in the door. And here's Jesus showing up in Matthew's house, eating with those sinners. And here's the thing, in that culture, even more so than our culture today, by eating with someone, it's actually going beyond just a meal. It's calling them friend. And see, for Jesus, it wasn't about the religion or the rules. What Jesus came for was a relationship, because he's a person who's meant to be experienced. So back at the party at Matthew's house, the religious leaders, again, they're all bent out of shape that Jesus is eating with those sinners, honestly, people like us around the table here tonight. And when Jesus heard this, he responded back to him, and he said, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. And then he added, now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For I have come to call not those who think they're righteous, but those who know that they are sinners. So if you think about that, you know who the sinners are, like around this table or watching online? It's every single one of us. Me too. And see, Jesus is the only human to ever walk this planet and not sin. And yet he sits at the table and he doesn't judge. He offers healing to those who know that they're sick. He doesn't want us to do more religious stuff to make up for our sin either. What he tells us to do is to show mercy to people who are hurting and who need healing. And the problem with the Pharisees, and honestly, like church people at times, the problem with me sometimes is we're sick and we don't even know it, right? We're like cancer patients walking around, but we don't even think the cancer is there. Every single one of us, we have this issue called sin, and only Jesus can heal it. Now, only by experiencing him does healing take place in our lives. And if I'm being really honest, I can actually be a Pharisee often. I can look like I have it all together, or I can try to fake it, or I can cover up my sins with the best of them, and I can point out other people's sin really well too. But here's the problem with sin, and here's the problem with trying to fake it and hiding it. Hiding doesn't make the sickness or the sin go away, does it? It's still there. And so according to Jesus, the only way is acknowledging the sickness and getting to experience him. Like that's the only way for healing to take place. More religion, it doesn't get us there. And going to more church services, it doesn't get us there either. More regulations, like just do the right thing, like that certainly won't cut it either. It's only through an experience with Jesus that we will begin to see anything change in our lives. And so what I love about this story that we just read, the story of Matthew, is that Jesus, he's invited Matthew into an experience with him. And Jesus knows that Matthew needed healing. And Matthew knows that he's sick, and he knows that all of his friends are sick, so he goes, hey, come on, get up close to Jesus. They know the extent of their sin. And so for Jesus and Matthew, this experience, like it's really, really important. Because if you play this out further, think about this. Like if you play this out further, if Jesus doesn't become friends with Matthew that day, and if he doesn't go to his house for the party, and if he doesn't have an experience with Matthew, we wouldn't even be reading this story. Because you don't have a book of Matthew if Jesus and Matthew don't get to be friends. Aren't you guys glad that Jesus came and sat around a table with sinners like us and people like Matthew? See, that's what Hope City's all about, right? We believe that in community together, we have the best shot possible of experiencing Jesus for who he really is. And that as we experience him, he changes our lives. And then he goes on through us, and he impacts generation after generation after generation with his hope. And so I'd love to end on this question. I'd love for you all watching online to hear through my friends around the table, how have you gotten to experience Jesus up to this point through this new church called Hope City? What would you say to someone who's maybe watching online and they're wondering, like, is this church for a person like me?
So I grew up in the church. I had a really strong youth group. I had a good group of friends who we hung out together. Sunday school was a priority, and we enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And then I graduated high school, and my roommate and I made it a priority to find a church down here in Fayetteville and get involved and volunteer and just stay connected, because you hear about the statistics of people who grow up in the youth group, they graduate, and they lose that relationship with Jesus really quick.
Yeah.
And that's a lot easier said than done, to find a church that feels like home, especially when you grow up in such a great one.
Yeah.
And so Hope City to me is like an answered prayer that I've been praying every night for 2.5 years. When you reached out to me and we met for the first time, it was just the biggest weight off my shoulders that I can't even express it.
And you've been carrying that weight for 3 years.
I have.
Yeah.
And I know it's something that I've been praying, and also my parents have been praying about.
Yeah.
And seeing them light up when I share stories, talking to my grandparents about it, they're just as excited as I am.
Yeah.
And so this is a community that I love being involved with, and being welcomed. It's just great to be a part of something like that. And so that's my encouragement to anybody. My cry out to people who are looking, who are in that same position. This is a church that is going to make you feel welcome. You can bring whatever you have to the table, and we'll meet you there. We'll pick it up for you, carry it through the door.
Love it.
And this whole church has done that for me many times.
Love it, man. It's awesome.
For some reason, the Spirit didn't let it leave. I was continually pushed to join something. Wasn't finding, that real authentic Jesus that I had met many years before, like at places here. There were glimpses of him, and I dove into those opportunities. I highly encourage just to stay in church wherever you are. Jesus will meet you there. But there was something about how this got started, the way my sister lit up about it, and then sitting down and meeting with people that just felt right. I'm a huge camp guy. I go to camp all the time. I'm a camp counselor, and I always tell my kids that it doesn't matter what you bring to the table, it matters that you show up. And I continually feel that this is a place that, if I've had a really crappy week, that I can show up and not feel the weight of, oh my God, I gotta put my tie on. I can just show up. Or if I'm I love being involved, but sometimes you have those Sundays where you're tired and not feeling a weight to join the servicey, expectation and actually desire to serve somewhere. That's how I feel like when I'm a part of this, is that I want to be here, and it's scary because I have a lot of baggage when it comes to church, but it's even more amazing to lean into the fear that's there and trust that there's something more.
Love it.
So I can relate to what you said about sometimes you're tired and you kind of want to show up, but you also kind of want to stay home. But I felt like that for a really long time. And I felt like I had to put on a mask and I would show up, but it wasn't really me showing up. And I felt like I had to look a certain way, act a certain way. And for a long time, I had this mentality of being a pastor's wife. I couldn't have bad days or I couldn't struggle. And so I love that I can tell you all, you come over to our house, I'm really having a hard day, my kids are really difficult today, or
that was a nice way of saying
I love
that.
them so much, or I'm just struggling, you all know I struggle with depression, anxiety, and that just is really hard some days, and I'm not scared to tell you that because I know some of you can relate and you're just going to love me through that. And so I'm just really thankful for the community that is growing.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
I think for us, we just for a long time were really feeling just this hole in our church experience and really just craving more and really honestly needing more Jesus. And we had set a New Year's resolution in January 2020 that we needed to figure out what we were doing about church and what was happening that year. That was the goal. And that first Sunday came around and we found out about the Hope City plant. And it was just this immediate relief and the fastest New Year's resolution that I have ever kept and met for the year. And ever since then, just have felt just a peace about being here. And especially as we've gotten to know more people, just really feeling like I can bring everything to the table. The anxiety I've had, the struggles with perfectionism, nothing is off limits. And it's okay to be messy along the way honestly, we love that. We'd rather be messy than trying to put a mask on. So it's been just really wonderful, and I really would encourage anybody welcome. Everybody's welcome here.
Love it. All right, guys, thanks for being here tonight. And everybody watching online, thank you for jumping in to join us at the table. And I'm really glad that we had this experience together. And we hope that this moves beyond online, that you would want to come experience Jesus, come find a seat at our table with us. So if you hang out for just a couple minutes, we've got a song that's going to play that's all about Jesus. And maybe just like take these words in these next few minutes and just get to experience him right now in this moment. And then we would love to invite you after that. Just hang out for a minute. We've got some ways that you could take some next steps with us, engage with us, and just get to know more about who Hope City is. Thanks for being here.
Let's continue to worship this morning. In the darkness, we were waiting without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. And praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three
so much for being here today with us. And for those of you joining online, we're so glad that you're here. If you have any questions or want us to follow up with you or just need someone to talk to, feel free to reach out. You can comment, you can message us, and we'd love to get to know you more.
Yeah, I think this experience, what we had tonight, this was one of my favorites, having everybody around the table with us and inviting you all into this conversation. But we would love to invite you beyond just online. Again, we've got some ways that you can connect with us. We've got a gathering coming up next weekend. It's at a location called the After School Program at I-49 in Sunset. We meet from 10 a.m. to noon. So we'd love to have you join us there next Sunday and literally sit around a table with all of these people here. And then coming up here on the 24th of June, June 24th, we've got a Northwest Arkansas Naturals game. You do have to register online for tickets, but it's completely free. So come hang out with us on the home plate party deck. You can register at hopefornwa.city, hopefornwa.city/events/naturals, and invite a friend to come along with you. And go ahead and register for a ticket for them as well, but we would love to have you come join us for that.
Yeah, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.